The guard demand that Arthur explain who allowed a human like him to enter their sacred lands. Arthur turns to Tesha, hoping she'll clarify the situation, but when he sees her remain silent, he feels betrayed, thinking himself foolish for once having considered her a friend. However, the truth is that Tesha hesitated only because she was still a child. When the guards announce that they will execute Arthur, she finally steps in, defending him and declaring that he saved her life. Even so, the guards insist on the assumption that Arthur must have manipulated her mind into believing that, as if that were even possible. In any case, the only wise and reasonable man in the Elven lands appears, stepping out of the same teleportation portal, and orders the guards to release Arthur. This man is Virian Erith, the former king of Elenwar, and he personally thanks Arthur for saving Tesha, revealing that she is his granddaughter, which means she is a princess of that kingdom. Arthur is completely shocked by the revelation, as he never imagined Tesha was royalty, judging by her behavior during the time they spent together. Tesha's parents, King Alwyn and Queen Mariel Erith, arrive moments later and finally reunite with their missing daughter after days of separation. While Mariel checks to see if her daughter is all right, Alwyn questions what a human is doing there. Apparently, Alwyn inherited his mother's IQ and is nowhere near as wise as his father, as he immediately orders his soldiers to execute Arthur. Virian intervenes once again, declaring that he was the one who told the guards to hold back. He explains to Alwyn that Arthur saved the precious Tesha, despite being considered a barbaric human. Tesha reinforces her grandfather's words, begging her father not to harm her friend, and even suggests inviting him to the castle. The idea of a human setting foot in the castle clearly makes Alwyn hesitate. But Tesha doesn't wait for an answer. She walks straight up to Arthur and says that if he agrees to go with her, the royal chefs will make his favorite snacks. Yes, that kind of bribe only works on little kids. Well, Arthur is technically still a child, so it's fair enough. Alwyn doesn't want to go against his strong-willed daughter, so he ends up agreeing. Meanwhile, Virian's curiosity reaches its peak as he senses a mysterious power in Arthur and asks to speak with him privately later on. For now, Arthur follows Tesha as they walk to the kingdom of Elenwar, an artistically structured society where houses are built both on and under the trees, and the people live a simple yet peaceful life. As Arthur walks beside Tesha, he draws many curious glances from the crowd, all wondering what a human is doing in such a place. Arthur can't get over the fact that Tesha hesitated to help him at first. Why would she do that? And what was that harsh expression on her face in that moment? He doesn't understand, and the thought continues to trouble him, stirring a sharp ache in his chest. Regardless, he remains wary of everything around him and does his best to stay alert and not let his guard down. They eventually arrive at the castle, located at the end of the city. Upon entering, they are greeted by dozens of elven maids whose sole duty is to ensure Tesha's constant happiness. However, today, Tesha wants to return the favor. She commands all of her maids to provide Arthur with the best hospitality possible, declaring that he saved her life. When the maids hesitate, Tesha reassures them that Arthur is one of the rare humans truly pure of heart. She then turns to Arthur and asks what he would like to do: eat snacks, play, have lunch, or maybe freshen up. But before anything else, Arthur wants to speak with Tesha's parents about what happened in the forest. Since no explanations have been given yet, he gathers everyone in the meeting room for a serious talk. Tesha, however, seems to be in her own little world and brings tea and snacks for everyone, perhaps thinking it's just a casual afternoon tea and nothing more. In any case, Alwyn formally introduces himself, along with his wife Mariel and his father Virian, to Arthur. Arthur also introduces himself, saying he's just an ordinary boy born in a forgotten village in the kingdom of Sapin. He kneels before Alwyn, admitting that a commoner like him would never have had the chance to see royalty, let alone sit in the same room as the king of the elves. He expresses how grateful he is for the opportunity. Alwyn is surprised by how well-mannered Arthur is, despite claiming to be just a peasant, and allows him to proceed. Arthur then gives a detailed explanation of what happened, including how he became separated from his family. He doesn't lie to the king, but he also withholds a full truth, such as his encounter with the mysterious dragon Sylvia. Even so, he continues the story up to the point when he found Tesha being kidnapped by a group of slave traders, and the atmosphere in the room changes drastically. Once again, Alwyn seizes the opportunity to blame all humanity for what the slave traders attempted to do to his daughter. On the other hand, Virian asks the right question. How could a 5-year-old boy like Arthur rescue Tesha from 3 adult slave merchants? It couldn't have been through negotiation or begging. That's when Arthur finally reveals the truth. He claims to be a talented mage and that he used his powers to eliminate the kidnappers. However, Alwyn finds it hard to believe, and the same guard from earlier appears once again with his unwanted opinion, asserting that Arthur must have brainwashed Tesha just to gain access to their sacred lands. Varian, who has been defending Arthur from the beginning, can no longer tolerate the indirect disrespect toward him and immediately silences the guard. Tesha also steps in, adding that she heard the slave traders talking about selling her for a high price, recalling the traumatic experience. Once she finishes recounting what she went through before being saved by Arthur, her mother is moved to tears and pulls her into a tight embrace. A mother's love is always so pure and touching. Alwyn also realizes what his daughter endured, and because of that, he tells Arthur that he believes him and thanks him for everything he did for her. After explaining how he met Tesha, Arthur moves directly to the reason he requested that meeting. He says he's also been separated from his family, and all he wants now is to be reunited with his parents in Sapin. Alwyn can't believe what he's hearing. Arthur is seriously asking elves to help humans. Beings they consider barbarians? Alwyn insists there's no way they can help humans, and that Arthur must understand he needs to find his own way back home. But Arthur, always clever, quickly finds a way to argue his case. He reminds Alwyn of everything he did for his family in the city, and says that if they can't return the favor after all he's done, then they are the true barbarians and have no right to call humans such, since they're acting the same way. Varian looks at Alwyn with an expression that clearly says, "You've been caught." He declares that Alwyn has walked right into his own trap. Tesha also stands beside her father, looking straight at him, waiting to see what decision he'll make. With no way out, Alwyn agrees to help Arthur but informs him that the only teleportation portal leading to Sapin can only be open once every 7 years, after a summit between the 3 leaders. It was recently used, meaning the next activation will be in 5 years. Arthur doesn't have that kind of time. He can't wait 5 years to reunite with his family. Alwyn notices this and says he'll send soldiers to escort Arthur back. The journey will begin the next day. Arthur feels a sense of relief upon hearing that. However, his mana core starts hurting again. He barely manages to leave the meeting and heads to take a bath. The pain doesn't subside. It continues to throb. After the bath, he clutches his chest tightly, trying to figure out what's causing the pain and what the solution might be. He thinks of Sylvia and mentally asks her what he should do about the pain. Unfortunately, the answer won't come anytime soon. He goes out for a walk around the palace, and the fresh air helps ease the pain a little. He thinks of his parents and how much he misses them. He wonders if they're still alive, but concludes that they're far too strong to have died so easily. So, he believes they must be okay. When he looks up and sees Tesha with her parents, he begins to wonder whether his own family will welcome him back with the same joy, or if they'll be angry that he's been gone for so long. All these thoughts weigh heavily on the poor boy, who remains frozen in place, overwhelmed by his feelings. Tesha runs over to him. He teases her, calling her a spoiled princess, and tells her to go enjoy the comfort of her parents. Arthur confides in Tesha about his worries regarding his parents, and whether they will welcome him warmly. Tesha gently holds his face and is surprised by his insecurity. How could he even think that his parents wouldn't be happy to see him again? For her, parents always worry about their children, and surely his must be desperate with his disappearance. As she comforts him, delicate, shiny bell flowers begin to fall around them. Tesha recognizes the flowers and comments on them cheerfully. But to Arthur, the sight stirs a different reaction. He remembers his first moments entering the city, when he feared that Tesha would betray him. Now, though, he feels relieved that she didn't. Still, these flowers look familiar, in another way. What Tesha sees as beautiful blossoms, Arthur perceives as weapons. He's seen them in past battles. Not fully understanding why, Arthur apologizes to Tesha, which confuses her, and says he likes the flowers too. Then, in a sudden movement, he throws one back, thinking it's a weapon launched at him. To his surprise, the sender is none other than Varian. Arthur confronts him, asking why he would attack his own granddaughter, but Varian scoffs and questions whether anyone could really be harmed by something so harmless. Tesha runs to Varian and pleads with him to leave Arthur alone, insisting that he's not like the other humans and that he's a good person. She begs her grandfather to stop provoking him, but Varian claims he isn't provoking him at all. To him, Arthur is the first truly interesting human he's ever seen, and for that reason he doesn't intend to let him go. With a bit of magic, Varian makes Tesha sit down and grabs a staff, challenging Arthur to a duel. The fight begins, and Arthur gives it his all. He channels all his mana, but quickly realizes that Varian is faster. No matter how hard he tries, he can't land a single hit. In one particularly aggressive move, Varian breaks a staff, and a fragment nearly hits Tesha, but Arthur steps in just in time to shield her. Determined, he decides to use magic. It's a powerful spell, one that few can endure. Yet, even that is effortlessly repelled by Varian. After several failed attempts, Arthur finally manages to strike Varian on the head. Rather than becoming angry, Varian grows even more excited. He demands a second round, but Tesha jumps up and nudges her grandfather, asking him to leave her Artie alone. Varian retorts that Arthur isn't the innocent boy she thinks. He's the one who provoked him and nearly won. Arthur dismisses this kind of praise, saying that Varian is overestimating his abilities. That's when Varian makes a surprising offer. He asks Arthur to become his disciple. Arthur considers the idea. It could be advantageous. But what he thinks about his parents, not knowing whether he's alive or dead, he hesitates. He shares his concerns with Varian, who reveals that there's a way to inform his parents that he's alive and well without returning home right away. Arthur is interested, but before any explanation is given, Varian releases a surge of energy into his body. Arthur's mana core flares up in pain again. Varian then confirms what Arthur feared. He's been marked with the will of the beast. The only way to survive, to keep the mysterious power from consuming him, is to become Varian's disciple.